You're listening to the Telltale Channel. Don't forget to check me out on all social media: Patreon, Twitter, Teespring, and Etsy. All links can be found in the description or on my website, telltaleatheist.com. So the next article I'm going to take a look at is entitled "Robert Jeffress, Using Bad Math, Claims Democrats Are a Godless Party." This is on the Friendly Atheist website, friendlyatheist.com, and it's by Hemant Mehta. So let's give it a read and see what it has to say. During an interview yesterday on Fox Business Channel, MAGA cultist and Trump sycophant Pastor Robert Jeffress said a lot of wild stuff, but there's one particular leap of logic that made no sense even for him. Quote, "It is no coincidence that 70% of atheists identify as Democrats and only 15% as Republicans. The Democrat Party has become a godless party." Now, I want to address that part, and I'm going to address it in just a second. But before we get to that part, I actually watched the whole video. I wanted to watch the rest of it. So let's start with the first section, and then we'll watch the second section.
Pastor, these so-called peaceful demonstrators, according to President Obama, are burning Bibles now. They're actually burning Bibles. President Obama once ridiculed Americans for clinging to religion, but here they are. What do you think this is all about? What is it?
I just want to point something out. I actually looked this up. I think that this was just a general bonfire. I looked this up on Snopes and some other places to see were they burning Bibles. This is a giant Bible burning. I get the impression from it that there was technically a Bible in the fire, but I don't think it was a Bible burning. For the record, I just want to say I don't believe in burning books. A lot of books have caused a lot of damage. Like, for example, the Bible has caused immeasurable damage. But more specifically, Jehovah's Witnesses literature has caused a lot of damage to people's lives. I'm not even in favor of burning those. I'm not in favor of burning Jehovah's Witness literature. I would rather keep it and use it against them, because they've been known to basically outlaw that literature before. Jehovah's Witnesses have told their members, burn the old literature because it's out of date and whatever else. In reality, it had stuff in there that they didn't want their members to know that they ever endorsed or said. So I'm actually very opposed to burning books. I think we should keep the books and use the information in them against the people who wrote it. That's my position. Now, if you want to burn your Jehovah's Witness literature as like a cathartic experience or whatever, I get it. That's okay with me. I'm not going to like tear you down for that or whatever. That's fine. That's just how I deal with it. I use it against them. Let's continue.
Tell you about these people, that they're burning Bibles.
Look, David, there is a great contrast between the peaceful civil rights protest of John Lewis and Martin Luther King Jr., who actually based their protest on the teachings of the Bible, compared to these anarchists who are basing what they're doing on rebellion against the Bible.
Wait. How are they basing it on rebellion against the Bible? I don't understand. I find it fascinating that in the 1800s, people who were pro-slavery were using Bible verses to support their positions. That's the funny thing about the Bible. There's a verse in there for everybody. It's such a broad book that spans so many thousands of years that there is something in there to support everything, to support every single position. There are pro-abortion verses and anti-abortion verses. There's pro-gay verses and there are anti-gay verses. Look at this guy's face. God, he's such a fucking... Anyway, this guy could definitely pick either side he wanted and use the Bible to support him. But for the record, during the 60s civil rights movement, there was Malcolm X and there was Martin Luther King Jr. They were both operating around the same time. One was nonviolent, Martin Luther King Jr., and one believed in violent protest, Malcolm X. And you can actually look up their debates on the subject. Very fascinating. Very fascinating. You should definitely go look up, after this stream is over, whatever, you should definitely look up Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X, violence versus nonviolence debates. Both have very interesting arguments, and they can be applied outside of the general civil rights movement to apply more directly to forms of protest. But generally speaking, I think violence kind of pushes people. Violent protest will accomplish a goal faster, but it has a higher failure rate in the end. It's easier to attack and criticize somebody who is using violent protest. So if you can get the changes pushed through rapidly through that protest, then it has a chance of being more productive than nonviolent protest. But nonviolent protest is a sure way to gain support for a movement. I'm always in favor of nonviolent protest. Martin Luther King Jr. succeeded. He was a success story, and he did it nonviolently. So generally speaking, I say nonviolence is the way to go. But let's continue with Robert Jeffress here.
Down, burning Bibles, burning American flags, burning down police stations. And look, I'm not saying that...
Okay, so he conflated those three things there just now. They're not the same thing. Burning flags and burning Bibles are speech. It's a form of free speech. Burning down a police station is effectively violence. Those should not be conflated. But in his mind, they're the same. In his mind, if you're burning a Bible or a flag, then you are being violent because he feels like you're attacking his beliefs or whatever. Or he wants his listeners to feel like that.
All Democrats support this kind of action, but you know, there's a Bible verse that says bad company corrupts good morals. And when
Jehovah's Witnesses said bad association spoils useful habits, I can't tell you how many times I heard that verse. They used that verse to justify shunning and to justify preventing me from having friends outside the religion. And of course, I didn't have any friends inside the religion either, so it just led to a really shitty situation.
Democrats hang around Antifa and Black Lives Matters and do not condemn these kind of anarchist activities, they are complicit in them by remaining silent about them.
I don't know of any Democratic leaders who are defending or staying silent about rioting and violence and looting. Nobody wants that. Like, nobody wants that to happen. That's not helping anybody. But he's conflating, as I mentioned a second ago, violence with nonviolence. He's conflating flag burning and Bible burning, a peaceful form of protest, with violence. He's blurring the lines. What is violence? I said this in a video recently. If you're an extremist, you can find justifications for just about anything. You can find explanations for anything. Well, what is violence really? If somebody doesn't like me and they start showing it and it hurts my feelings and it has real ramifications on my life, that's a form of violence, right? Am I then justified in using real, actual physical violence against them for not liking me? That's the kind of logical path this takes you down. We have a definition for violence, and it does not match what Robert Jeffress is saying here. Let's listen to the next clip. This is from the same video. It's just from the next section here. Let's see what he had to say.
But, you know, it does intrigue me that there is this attempt. There was a Black Lives Matter leader who about a month ago suggested that statues of Jesus, if they look too white, should be torn down. I mean,
that's because Jesus wasn't white. I don't know that anyone was saying that they should be, like, maliciously torn down or whatever. Like, I'm not really comfortable with how he's framing that. But why would anybody want a white statue of Jesus? He was not white. That is completely absurd. He was Middle Eastern.
It's just extraordinary. And in fact, I'm hearing from pastors and some priests that it is happening, that the desecration of these statues of Jesus and Mary are being desecrated, torn down, and they're not talking about it much because they don't want copycats around doing more of it.
That's exactly right.
Well, what is it about Jesus Christ and religion that has become the focus of these protesters, if you will?
Well, listen, I think, quite frankly, I think President Trump hit it out of the ballpark when he talked about Joe Biden and, by extension, the Democrats, by saying they're against God and they're against the Bible.
Okay, Joe Biden is a Catholic. Joe Biden's Catholic. The majority of the leadership, vast majority of the leadership in the Democratic Party is religious, like really religious. They're just not right-wing extremists. That's the difference. And that's why they can't stand it. They're trying to conflate religion and politics. They're trying to mix them together. If you aren't Republican, then you don't love God. If you love God, then you're a Republican. They're trying to mix those together and make it so they can't be broken apart.
Well, listen, I think, quite frankly, I think President Trump hit it out of the ballpark when he talked about Joe Biden and, by extension, the Democrats, by saying they're against God and they're against the Bible. And I think that's not an overstatement. It is no coincidence, David, that 70% of atheists identify as Democrats and only 15% as Republicans. And the Democrat Party has become a godless party.
I just want to point something out here. I don't know if those numbers are accurate. I would venture to guess they're not, because 70 plus 15 is not 100. I don't know if everybody knew that or not. I'm just going to say, just because 70% of a group of, 5 million people maybe, are part of this organization, the Democrat Party, does not mean the entire party is non-religious. That's not how statistics work. That's not how numbers work in any stretch of the imagination.
Party has become a godless party. And so that's why you find such animosity against conservative Christians and against the Bible.
It has nothing to do in the Democrat Party, nothing to do with Christians. Just take that word out of it. It's the Republican ideology and the problems that it creates. That is the issue. They need to be persecuted as Christians. They need to be hated because that gives their movement breath.
Bible.
The bottom line is that,
I think the president knows
these anarchists certainly are taking actions that are hostile to religion in America. Pastor Jeffress, yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, these anarchists, quote unquote. What does burning a Bible have to do with anarchy? It has absolutely nothing to do with it. I'm not an anarchist. These people are just completely bizarre. They're just building up this story, this lore, and trying to fortify it and turn themselves into victims. It is so sad. It's like Donald Trump talking about how he's always being victimized by the press and always being attacked and hated and all this. Dude, you are the president of the United States, arguably the most powerful person in the world, and you're complaining about how badly people treat you. Give me a fucking break. You could do just about anything. You could end humanity tomorrow if you wanted by launching nukes. You could end the human species tomorrow, and you're complaining about people not liking you. Give me a break, man. Let's go back to Hemant Mehta's article and see what he says. This is a quote from the video. It's no coincidence that 70% of atheists identify as Democrats and only 15% as Republicans. The Democrat Party has become a godless party. This is Hemant Mehta. It's true that about 70% of atheists are Democrats and 15% are Republicans. That's according to the Pew Research Center's 2014 Religious Landscape Study. Considering how much has changed since then, I'd strongly suspect that 70% number is quite a bit higher now. Okay, hang on. I'm actually going to disagree with Hemant Mehta on this one. Based on my experience in the atheist movement online and elsewhere, I suspect actually a far higher number of atheists are Republican now. Largely thanks to YouTube, I think. A lot of YouTube atheists in 2016 turned really far right-wing, or were, at the very least, espousing right-wing talking points and ideas. And it pushed a lot of atheists in that direction. I'm going to guess, actually, it's probably closer to 40 or 50% are Democrats. I'm going to guess like a really, really high percent are Republican, or at least very conservative. Anyway, it's just a small nitpick. Let's continue reading. That same study, however, also found that 84% of Democrats believe in God in some capacity. 76% are absolutely or fairly certain God exists. It's not a godless party by any stretch of the imagination. If you need help making sense of Jeffress' innumeracy, even if 100% of atheists were Democrats, the party as a whole would still be more than 70% religious. Yeah. Just because atheists lean liberal doesn't mean the Democratic Party is overrun by atheists, but most of us recognize that the GOP only cares about the demands of white evangelicals. Whatever problems we have with Democrats, Republicans are significantly worse on the issues we typically care about. Jeffress knows that, but telling the truth goes against his faith. It would upset his Lord and Savior Donald Trump. That's funny. That's a good point. Like I said, I really think that largely atheists have moved far more right-wing, specifically in 2015 and 2016, to a disturbing degree. We can talk about conservatism. We can talk about traditional values. We can talk about tax cuts. Honestly, seriously, I'm more than willing to talk about this stuff with other people, with other atheists or whatever. That's conservatism. We can talk about conservatism in an honest conversation about it. But that's not what the Republican Party is about. The Republican Party, at this point in time, is about pushing Christian nationalism. That's what it is. About pushing a Christian state. So it's mind-blowing to me that any atheist, whether they are conservative or not, would ever vote for a Republican candidate. It really blows my mind. You can be conservative, but still understand that Christian nationalism is bad, and that pretty much takes precedent right now for me. I don't want a Christian nationalist state, so I'm voting Democrat. That's just what it is.